It happens so fast. Your body betrays you before your mind can even fake it. Your stomach drops. Your jaw tightens. There is that tiny electric pause behind your eyes. While you stare at a person, you absolutely know, and one simple thing should be there, right there, ready to leave your mouth. But it isn't. Their name hasn't slipped. It hasn't faded. It is just gone. Blank. Clean. Like a drawer you were certain existed opens to nothing, and now the real panic starts. Not inside your head, in your body. Your heartbeat kicks up, your smile turns mechanical. You buy time with nonsense. Hey, good to see you. How have you been? You angle your shoulder toward the group, hoping someone else will rescue you. Maybe another person will say it first. Maybe they'll introduce themselves. Again, if this keeps happening, the fear gets ahead of the moment. You walk into introductions, already bracing for failure. You stop trusting your memory. You start wondering whether people read it as arrogance, indifference, maybe even stupidity. And that tiny social miss begins to feel much bigger than it is. Because it doesn't just threaten a conversation, it threatens how safe you feel around other people. The part that stings isn't just forgetting. It is where it happens. 3 meetings in, maybe more. They smile, like you should know them. Your face has to stay warm, while your mind turns over. Nothing. Not even a blurry first letter, just blank. So, you start performing. And what makes it worse is how unfairly specific the failure feels. You remember that this person hates cilantro. You remember they moved in August, drive a blue Subaru, have a son with braces, cried when they talked about their father, laughed too hard at your joke about airport food. You remember the entire texture of them. But the one thing you're socially required to produce on command is missing. So now, it doesn't feel like a memory issue. It feels like a character flaw. Like maybe you're careless. This is why it can hit so hard in places that matter. A teacher staring at a classroom roster after a week of trying. An office worker introducing a colleague they've sat near for 2 years, while you desperately search your brain for something that should have been easy. And this is the part where a lot of people quietly start judging themselves for the wrong thing. Because if you forget names all the time, there's a good chance you are not detached, not selfish, not secretly dismissive. You're often the exact opposite. You're too present inside yourself, too busy monitoring every tiny detail of how you're coming across. While they say they are Daniel, your brain is running a private surveillance operation. Am I smiling normally? Was that too much eye contact? Did I talk over them? Should I say my name back? Am I being weird right now? So the name lands for a split second and then gets flattened under that whole internal monologue. If that sounds uncomfortably familiar, you are very far from the only one. This happens to people who can remember a face for years, who can recall what someone ordered at dinner, what story they told about their brother, the exact color of their jacket, even the month of their birthday, and still lose the name almost instantly. Not because they don't care, but because their attention was hijacked at the moment the label arrived. There is actually a very human reason for that. In group settings, especially, the mind often leaves the room before the body does. It starts rehearsing the next sentence, fixing the last one, bracing for its turn. Psychologists have observed this for decades. When people are preparing to speak, memory for what was just said drops hard. So if you live with social anxiety or just that constant hyper-awareness that makes every interaction feel slightly audited, you can get stuck in that state all the time, half listening, half performing. And when that is your normal, names don't fail because your memory is broken. They fail because your attention was occupied, which for a lot of people is much cleaner and much more accurate way to tell the story. Here's the uncomfortable part people miss. The injury is real, but the accusation is usually false. When someone blanks on your name, your nervous system doesn't translate that, as their encoding failed under load. It translates it as I was forgettable. That is why it stings so fast. A name feels personal. It feels like the smallest proof that you registered as a human being. But look closely at what is actually happening. The person who forgot your name is not necessarily dismissing you. In many cases, they retain the parts of you their brain grabbed first and hardest. The story about your sister, the scar on your hand, the joke you made that was slightly too dark, the way your face changed before you laughed. They were present, just not equally present. For the label attached to all of it, that is the mechanism. Memory is not a camera roll. It does not file every detail with equal respect. It ranks, it triages, it keeps what feels charged, vivid, connected, useful. A name, on first contact, is often none of those things. It is an abstract sound dropped into the busiest second of an interaction. Right when the other person is managing eye contact, decoding your expression, monitoring their own body, wondering how they're coming across, trying not to sound awkward. So, the pressure isn't coming from the forgotten person. The pressure is coming from the social moment itself. And the one who forgets is often the one already straying under it. That is why the same brain that loses Ethan in 5 seconds can remember your birthday, your dog's, surgery, the exact sentence you said at dinner 3 years ago. It didn't reject you. It encoded you sideways. If this happens to you, what detail about people sticks first when the name doesn't? So if this keeps happening, don't fix it with shame. Fix it with protocol. The moment you hear a name, don't let it float past like background noise. Catch it. Say it back out loud. Nice to meet you, Kevin. Then use it again before the first minute ends. Not 10 times, like a robot. Just enough to force the sound into the scene. Your brain remembers scenes better than labels. So build one on purpose. Notice the green jacket, the chipped coffee, mug, the laugh that comes a second too late. Now, Kevin is no longer a loose word. He is Kevin in the green jacket holding burnt office coffee. And if your mind still slips under pressure, lower the pressure. This is where boundary comes in. Stop pretending you're a machine built for perfect retrieval on command. If you miss the name, ask again, cleanly, instead of performing that frantic little social theater. I'm sorry. Remind me of your name. That is not failure. That is nervous system protection. Because every second you spend panicking, your attention narrows, your chest tightens, and the name you wanted gets pushed even farther out of reach. Social anxiety is a pickpocket. It steals working memory first. You can also stop outsourcing your confidence to raw memory. Use notes. Add context in your contacts. Link people to where you met, who they came with, what they do, what they mention. That isn't cheating. That is building external scaffolding. Instead of expecting your brain to do a job it does inconsistently under stress. The goal is not to become a perfect namer. The goal is to keep your mind from being hijacked by embarrassment and to stay present enough to actually register the person in front of you, because that is the real defense here. Protect your attention, protect your body, protect your right not to turn one mislabel into a character indictment. And I'm curious, when you forget someone's name, what is the strange detail you remember instead? So let's end where the shame usually begins. Forgetting a name does not mean you're cold, shallow, rude, or broken. It may mean your brain tagged the wrong thing as important in a crowded second. Not the label, but the person, the cadence of their voice, the joke they made, the scar on their hand, the way your chest tightened around them or relaxed. That is not emptiness. That is selective encoding. And once you see that, you get something back that embarrassment steals from you. Choice. You can stop turning every blank moment into a character verdict. You can say, I lost your name. Tell me again. And stay present instead of performing panic. Because the truth is, a name was never the whole person. Sometimes it was the thinnest part of them. So, I'm curious. When a name disappears, what strange detail survives instead?